Hello everybody, welcome back to Worldhoppers. For today's video, I am joined by some newer booktubers, and we're going to be doing kind of a hybrid of the Booktube Newbie Tag, but then also just having a general conversation about being on Booktube, being new to Booktube, what's different about Booktube now compared to maybe when we first started it. And I actually am going to just start with everybody introducing themselves and a little bit about their channel. So Ingrid, if you want to kick it off, and then we'll go with Sarah and then Christy.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Ingrid. My channel name is Ingrid Reads a Lot. I actually just restarted a new channel. I used to have another channel that I kind of just deleted, I guess is the word, because I hadn't posted in a long time. So this is brand new. I've had it for like a month, I'd say. Yeah, for about a month.
Sarah.
I'm Sarah. My channel is Fairy Reads, even though I don't read very many fairy books anymore. I've had my channel for about a year and does not feel like it has been that long at all.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I remember when you started your channel.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. I was thinking about a video that I'd done last August, and I was like, how has that been a year since I did that? But it's been fun.
Nothing makes time feel like it's going by faster than when you look at your video scheduling, because you're like, okay, because then when you're looking at your TBRs and what you're planning to read when, and you're looking at like, okay, well, I've got the finally fall tag I'll probably do, and fall comes around, you're like, wait a second, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's like spooky reads, and then it's suddenly the end of the year, and you're like, I guess I'll take time off because of the holidays, and then it's the new year and you're like, what happened? So I feel like having a channel in some ways and just reading in general makes you feel like it's a constant reminder how we're all gonna die someday. Time's just passing so fast. Anyway, Christy.
I remember when you made a video about that before, Elle, where it was like reading makes you face your own mortality, and I'm like, oh, I didn't come to this video expecting an existential crisis. But yes, hello, I am Christy. My channel is Christy's Cozy Corner. My channel is about, I think, 2 months old at this point. But just like Ingrid, I also did previously have another channel that I started in 2019, I think. And I only did it for like a couple of months because it was just like a really bad time for me to put on more stuff because I was like working full time and also doing studies. So too much life stuff going on. So then I stopped, and now I restarted.
Yay, and everybody's channels will be linked, so definitely check everyone out. But I also thought it'd be interesting with this sort of mix of, you know, Sarah, like you said, it's not brand new, but it's still on the newer side. And then Ingrid and Christy having restarted their channels, I thought would make kind of for an interesting look at Booktube. Before jumping into the actual Booktube Newbie Tag questions, I did have a couple of other things that I wanted to ask. So just in general, what's your impressions of Booktube as a whole? When you started your channel, was it something where you had just found Booktube and then you jumped in because you immediately were like, I want to do this? Were you nervous for a long time, but you wanted to do it? What kind of was the situation like? And then what has changed about Booktube from when you first started watching it to now? What has changed in your mind about Booktube? What did you think was one way and now you're like, oh, I kind of feel differently? So Christy, I'll let you kick this one off.
Oh, I joined last because I thought we were gonna go in like
you can wait a sec if you want to answer. There's a lot of questions in that.
It's okay, I can start. Okay, sorry. I already forgot what the question was. Okay, starting with the one that you asked about what it was like when I first started watching Booktube versus now. So I started watching Booktube like a long time ago, maybe around like 2017, 2018. And I feel like it was so different back then. First of all, there weren't as many channels, but also it was like it didn't feel like as much of a community as it does now, because I feel like when I watch booktube videos now, you know, there's like all these kinds of live shows like Worldhoppers, and even individual creators too. Like they have a lot of collab content and like rating sprints and stuff. So like one of the things that made me want to start my channel again was because I saw there was like a lot of that kind of collabing going on, and it was like a much closer feeling community. Even though like there are so many channels now and it's definitely gotten a lot bigger, I feel like it feels closer as a community now, at least in like the subsection of fantasy booktube that I frequent.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually was going to have a very specific, do you feel like it's changed since you first started watching it? And you definitely got, no, I kind of included that within, but just like this individually was a thing that I did want to make sure we touched on, because I agree. I think that before you didn't see as many collaborative things, and it makes me really happy to see a lot more, since so many of us, I think, started our channel because we wanted to connect with other people who are readers. And I know some people have a booktube channel and they have friends or loved ones that read in their personal life, but I think a lot of people don't. And so it's kind of nice. And in a weird way, I've found that I think I watch a lot less booktube now than I did before, because I think a lot of booktubers now, they just talk to each other, if that makes sense. Because the second I'll go to watch one of my friends' videos, as soon as they say something, I'm like, oh, I have to message them about it. And then I'm like, I might as well just go talk to them now. So I feel like a lot of us are just very, I think there's kind of something to be said of when some people finally started that, they got the ball rolling on doing more collaborative things. I think it made a lot of other people feel like they could just reach out to people and talk to people. Because I think there's already that nervousness of first starting your channel, but then there's the nervousness of talking to other creators, because you're like, what if they think I'm weird, or what if they don't want to talk to me, or something, you know, you never know. And I think other sections of the internet, you never know if people are being genuine, but I think booktube, a lot of people are pretty genuine. I think it's rare for people to just be on here to like make money, because that's the wrong niche for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, just kind of jumping back into this, did you want to say other things too, Christy, or?
One more thing as well is I feel like there are, and I know that you guys have talked about this before on like previous Worldhopper videos, where there are certain books that you hear about all over booktube and you think is like so popular, it must be everywhere, but then you go on Goodreads and only has like 2,000 ratings or something.
Yeah.
So I feel like booktube has also like changed my impression of books in like that kind of like, yeah.
In that way.
Yeah.
And I think that because it's become so community based, that it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you start to think everybody must know about the drama with this book and this author, and then you expect everybody to have heard about certain books. And it's always really fun when somebody will be like, have you heard of I think it's called like A Court of Thorns and Roses, and you're like, what the heck? You know, like it's weird, because you're like, yeah, of course, but then it's not a known thing to everybody. And I think in a weird way, it's kind of refreshing at this point to have family members who don't necessarily read a lot, or friends who don't read a lot, because it sort of grounds us and reminds us like there's a bigger bookish world out there. And it's kind of fun that we have our what feels like a giant friend group now on the internet. I'm curious if you feel this way. Sorry, I'll make sure other people get to answer. When I first started, I did not ever think I would actually make friends when I started my channel. I thought when people would say that, when they would be like, oh, my biggest, I don't remember what tag has this question come up about like, what's the biggest thing that surprised you? But pretty much always everyone will answer like how many friends I've made and how many really close friends I have now. And I always thought that was nonsense, because I'm like, how close can you really get to people? But I don't think I've ever had better friends than I do now. And a lot of it's through booktube. I'm curious if all of you felt that way, or did you feel like less cynical than me and you're like, I definitely thought I could make friends? What do you think, Christy?
I think this goes back to the thing that you said before, like when you're people being afraid of like reaching out to people and collabing because they're afraid like, oh, people are gonna think I'm weird or I'm gonna be like really awkward. That's how I feel. So like, yeah, the whole making a lot of friends was like obviously something I would love, but I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna like pan out.
Ah, just from a almost a shyness or feeling like, not that you don't have confidence, but almost in that way, you mean, not like other people, you mean for yourself, like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know people. That makes sense. What do you think, Ingrid and Sarah? Did you feel that way before you started?
Well, I'm kind of like more forward, as you know. I will comment on people that I like, and I'm like, hey, like I really like, I think when I met Jashana, I literally commented on one of her videos, and I'm like, you're so awesome. I think we should be friends. Like that was something like it was something along those lines, and yeah, like we're really good friends now. I think I am kind of more like able to, and it's okay too if people don't reciprocate, right? There's like so many people out there that we admire and things like that, and so I think it's easy to make friends, especially talking about books. Like the easiest thing I found was if you like someone to just, if you're able to talk to them in private or DM or whatever and just say like, do you want a buddy read something? Because I feel like that makes it easier for you to actually communicate as opposed to just like leaving comments, because most people aren't able to see all their comments and stuff like that. So
yeah, comments has always been a weird, where I always feel bad because I'm like, well, I already talked a bunch, at least 10 minutes worth probably, right? In this whatever video a person's watching. So whatever the topic is, I'm like, I already talked a lot. And then I feel bad in a weird way. I almost feel bad answering comments sometimes because I feel like I'm taking over a little bit, like I'm imposing my view even more on something. When in some ways, I'm like, I just want people to get a chance to say something. But anyway, Sarah, what do you think? And then we'll kind of get back to the question itself.
Well, I'm the opposite of Ingrid. I hate like reaching out to new people because I'm like, they're gonna hate me, they're gonna ignore me, they're gonna think I'm a freak. Like, so so that part like definitely scared me a little bit. Not because like I didn't think anyone was gonna be like, oh, you're weird, just like without me interacting with them, but I knew I would have to like put myself out there a little bit, and that part scares me. So
I think a lot of people have this impression that if you're starting a channel, you're an extroverted person, you're really confident, you are somebody who you generally are kind of like a go-getter, you're not shy whatsoever. And I don't think that's true. I think it's true for some people. Some, like Ingrid mentioned Jashana. Jashana's not shy. If nobody knows, check out Jashana's channel, but she's like the most, I'll just talk to somebody, I'll take care of stuff if I get. She's not like, what do I do? I don't want to, like, if somebody knocked on the door, I don't think Jashana would panic, and I would panic whenever, like, you know what I mean? So
I panic too.
Yeah.
Like, who is at my door?
Yes. Or if I hear, if I hear Luna Bear bark at something, I always am like, is there an intruder? Even though it's usually a package or something. Anyway, getting back to the point here, I think a lot of the reason a lot of us start channels on Booktube is because we're actually kind of introverted, we're kind of shy, and the idea of like going down to an in-person book club and like having to face talk to strangers is kind of terrifying. But we can all like answer a message here and there, or a lot of people start by writing reviews and things like that, and so they're used to expressing their thoughts, and then they can reply to someone else's thoughts. And so like what you were saying with buddy reads, that's kind of what you're doing. You're just in real time saying your thoughts on a book, and then if something else sneaks its way in, you start actually just like talking to the person, then it's a lot easier than it would be to just meet people. So I think a lot of us are maybe not as extroverted as people would think. And Sarah, what you were saying, so Ingrid's the oddball maybe in this situation.
Well, but that's the thing. I think it's because it's in the internet. Like, I don't think I'm like this in person. Like, obviously I'm not so awkward that I can't make new friends, but I'm definitely not more shy in real life, but I feel like because it's in the internet, it's like you're able to like, I don't know. My thought is this person put themselves out there, right? So they did it for a reason. They're not here to not talk to anyone. So I think it's a lot
That's a good way to
easier.
look at it.
But yeah, for sure. Like none of my like the only person knows that I make videos is my husband, and like he lives with me. But like no one in my real life knows, and I like get
Yeah.
so shy about like my husband's like, why don't you tell people? Why don't you promote it or whatever? I'm like, hell no, I don't want anyone
Yeah.
in my real life knowing, you know?
Yes, I very much know. For the longest time, I was like, I don't want anybody to know about my channel. Anytime like a family member will, usually it's Sean's side of the family, will they'll tell him and then he'll tell me like, oh, like my mom was saying when she was watching your recent video, like nobody I know should watch my videos. It is a weird feeling. But getting back to the question that I feel like so far only Christy's been able to answer. Do you feel like BookTube has changed since you first started watching it? What are your impressions overall of BookTube, and what's changed as far as your perspective when you were just a viewer versus now when you actually have your own channel? So Sarah, what are your thoughts on those various different topics?
So I also started watching BookTube, I think around 2017. And it definitely felt like there were just a couple like really big people who were doing it. So it didn't feel as like, oh, anyone can start a channel. It definitely felt like, oh, well, these are the big people. Good luck if you try to start a channel or anything.
Yeah.
But definitely since then, it has been so much more of a community. And that made me really excited to start a channel because it felt more like, instead of me just like shouting my thoughts into the void of the internet, like there are actually going to be people who are like, oh yeah, me too. So it felt a lot more like welcoming, I guess, than, I mean, not that I can really say because I didn't have a channel back then, but it felt more welcoming starting my channel now versus 5 or 6 years ago.
If you had started when you first watched.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that too, Ingrid?
Yeah. You know what I was thinking too? Since I stopped making videos on the other channel and I started a brand new channel, I found that it's also a lot different, and I think it's because of book talk. Have you noticed that? I
would say I've noticed the community aspect because of Discord becoming so much bigger of a thing, because people can have like these extended conversations and groups almost.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about book talk.
I meant like BookTube as a whole, not just like the community aspect of it. But I noticed that I feel like for a while book talk was really big, and then a lot of people were doing like short form content. But then I feel like because I was away for like 8 months and I wasn't watching any BookTube or anything, like I wasn't making videos, but I also wasn't watching. I noticed that a lot of people that did have book talk are now like shifting over to long form content. And
no, that makes sense.
And I feel like that was like a little bit of a shift too, because for the longest time I feel like we kept hearing like, oh, book talk is the new thing. Like, so if you want to be big, like you need to make TikToks, right? Like that was the thing. And now what?
I have thoughts about book talk.
Okay.
I want to hear them after this.
I do. But yeah, I feel like now because I've seen a bunch of like booktubers that have like huge channels, and it's people that I had not to say I know everyone under the sun, but like I feel like most of the big booktubers like we know of, right? Because we watch or whatever. And since I created this new channel, I keep seeing like being recommended these like huge channels that do booktube, but I'm like, I've never even heard of this person. Yeah, who are you? Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I think it's like the shift.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that, but I do think it has added a different dynamic to BookTube. And there's almost, I wouldn't say BookTube feels like it's in competition with Book Talk necessarily, but obviously it feeds off of Book Talk because, you know, you see the videos like ranking popular Book Talk books and stuff like that. But I do find that something that's funny to me is I have seen every now and then somebody, and it's not like to say that these people who I hadn't seen before and now I seen who have huge channels are like somehow less than, because
Right.
you know, everybody's channels are there and appeal to someone, and that's awesome. But I have seen the occasional channel where I'm like, this is just a wrap up. Why are there like 300,000 views on this wrap up? Like, I'm confused because it's such a staple and it's something that I feel like is not some unique, brilliant idea and stuff. I'm like, this person must be like the coolest, funniest person. And then you watch and you're like, they're a person. This is very odd. Like, I can't, and it's, again, nothing against that person and like awesome that they're getting so many views. But then I wonder if there is this kind of aspect of book talk coming in and finding certain people and then building your audience from there. But I think that's a good point, because what I think all of us have kind of pointed out is that at some point when we first started, there was like these people, I know of these people who have channels, and then it feels like it's gotten to be more welcoming and like something anybody can sit down and do, which is awesome. But I hadn't really thought about the book talk part of it, which, speaking of, Christy's face was hilarious. So I need to know what you were thinking.
I don't know what kind of face I just made. No,
it was
but
just very like
I mean, Booktube walked so book talk. Yeah, Booktube walked so book talk can run is basically like how summing up my opinion of it. It's like the same thing that everyone else has said before. Like, book talk basically repeats everything that Booktube has already done like 5 years ago. But then they make it seem like they came up with it.
Well, I just think it's funny that these books, right, that we read literally like 5 years ago are like popular
Cruel
now.
Prince. I every time I see Cruel Prince and Six of Crows, and they're like,
or like the Song
oh my gosh,
of Achilles.
these need so much more hype.
Or like,
there's like 1 million ratings for these books
Colleen
already.
Hoover.
No, don't even talk to me about that.
No, but okay, just real quick. Like, she was big when I started watching Booktube, right? But then I feel like at some point people started catching on and was like, okay, you know, maybe she's not like the best author, and the things that she writes about is like not the best, not anything to be romanticized. And everyone kind of just like, okay, we're over Colleen Hoover. She's done. She's done. But then book talk comes and there's like this sudden resurgence, and I'm like, I thought we were finished with her. Why is she back now?
I mean, good for her, right? She's selling books, but yeah, it's not the best. But that just goes to show that it's not like about really great writing. It's about what gets popular. So
I do think that book talk kind of humbles Booktube, because you feel people like bristle in some ways, like, it's popular on book talk, and we act like Booktube is somehow superior. Not we as in like the four of us necessarily, but I feel like collectively. But then at the same time, you're like, you know, for the longest time, people were looking at Booktube like, Booktube, people who like make videos about books instead of writing reviews or having blogs or something. And like the things that got popular here were looked at as less than, and now we're experiencing that. And so it's just funny how I feel like there's always got to be this weird superiority and like this attitude of like, but the thing that I grew up with, we'll say, is like the best version and stuff. So I do think that book talk in some ways, I've liked the way it's affected Booktube, because I do feel like it kind of highlights who has that in them, that little bit of like gatekeeper, but we did it so nobody else can be a part of it. Because I do feel like something that I have to check myself on too is when people are especially when you're first getting back into reading, like you just have to let people figure out what they like, and don't be mean to them if I joked earlier about when people are like, have you heard of Sarah J. Maas and ACOTAR, stuff like that, and like to not be like, old news, you know, and kind of treat them like, you know, be excited for them that they're excited, is my point. But I do think book talk is funny for everything that you were saying, that it is in so many ways just like, hey, I've seen this happen before. I've seen this trend. I remember this idea going around. So it is kind of interesting. Do you think that book talk is going to kind of fade, or do you think a lot of book talk is going to come to Booktube? Do you think Booktube is going to fade and book talk's going to be the main thing?
I honestly don't think so. I think they're just gonna coexist and like mingle. That's what I feel like is happening. Because like people that were on Booktube are also making book talk, and then book talk people are now making YouTube videos, and I think they can coexist fine. It just depends on like the viewer and what kind of content they like, right? Because I know that a lot of the criticism around book talk is that you can't review something properly in however many seconds. I don't know how long the videos are, but it's like, it depends what you want to like hear about it. So
that actually, the way you worded that made me think. Actually, before I say anything, Christy and Sarah, do you have thoughts on that as well?
I definitely agree, because like if you're, especially with the rise of like collaborative videos like this that are much longer, if you want to sit down and watch an hour-long video discussing a book, you can do that on Booktube. But if you want just like a 10-second recommendation, book talk is where you should go for that instead. So I feel like they hit two different kinds of like content and like how much attention you have or how much time you might have to invest in whatever you're looking for.
Yeah. Do you feel like that too, Christy?
I was gonna say, until like the next new popular app comes along, and then books blow up there, and then book talk will be like, we already talked about that like 3 years ago. But I think also maybe a lot of creators are moving from book talk to Booktube because like as a platform, TikTok is not very like creator centric, like because you're just scrolling through your For You page and people don't really like, I don't want to say stan, but like for lack of a better word, like stan the creator. But it's more of just like going through fast content. But Booktube, you are watching more. So maybe that's why like some of them are transitioning from book talk to Booktube, because they want to have like that kind of closer community base.
That makes sense. I was going to say too that I could be mistaken because I'm not really on TikTok, but that would explain too a lot of the discrepancies in the amount of views, because you'll see things get millions of views and then the next thing will get like 1,000 views. Whereas I think on Booktube, it's usually creators find there's pretty consistent numbers, or at least there's a range that you expect. So I think there is more consistency in that way. And I think it's because of what you just said, Christy. There's like people kind of return for, I like the way this person reviews. I like this person's personality. I feel like there's a lot of overlap in our tastes. And on Book Talk, it's kind of like the trend of this book is popular and you're seeing this book get described or recommended a bunch. But I was going to say, kind of with our points about collaborative things becoming more popular on Booktube and the long format, do you think that the kind of rise of podcasts has helped Booktube a little bit and made it almost have more credibility? Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but it's made it more appealing to a lot of people than things like Book Talk. Because for a while, it seemed like Book Talk was going to sort of be the new place and that Booktube would become obsolete. But I think that podcasts kind of reignited people's interest in long form content. And then even though a lot of Booktube is, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, the collaborations tend to be really long. I mean, we've already been talking for almost a half hour. And these kinds of things, not just in this way, but just a dedicated book discussion or a person doing a really long vlog, those don't seem to be completely absent from what people are looking for. So do you think podcasts had a lot to do with that? Maybe.
I don't know. I listen to podcasts, but not about books. So maybe I just don't know. But I do get the appeal of like that it's, you're driving somewhere and you're listening to a podcast, or you're doing stuff around the house and stuff, and you do like that long form content. And I noticed through a lot of podcasts, like they will film and post on YouTube also.
Yeah.
So that if they're like referencing something, they can watch or whatever.
I think too with reading, sometimes you want to see someone else discuss the spoilers because you're like, is anybody gonna like talk about this thing that happened in this book? And when you're just describing like, here's this book I read, I really liked it, and like the general overview, that's not the same as that next level. Everybody talking about what they thought about this thing. So I think books kind of have a unique place on the internet and BookTube in particular. That was a lot of time for none of the actual BookTube newbie questions. So we'll start into the actual questions. Was there anything else anybody wanted to add before we jump into them, though? About any like last thoughts that you wanted to get out? Not really. Okay. So why did you start your channel? It's the first question from the newbie tag. So Sarah, since Christy is scared of going first. Why did you start your channel? I think I kind of know the answer.
Because I love books. I don't know if you could tell.
I wasn't expecting that, but that is, I think that's a common one.
I mean, because I do have a few friends who do read quite a bit, but I could just talk endlessly about books. So at least if they don't want to listen to me, I can just set up my camera and talk to myself about it for an hour instead. So I think that's the biggest reason why. And also the connection aspect, just getting to connect with more people who read as much as I do and similar things.
Do you feel that way too, Ingrid? Did you start because you love books?
Yeah, well, I mostly started because I wanted to talk to people about books, and no one in my life reads as much as I do, or at all. So, and I wanted to talk to other people about it because I love that feeling of when you read something really good and you're like, oh my God, I just need to talk to someone about this, and it's if you don't know people that read, who are you going to talk to,
Reading is such an isolated thing most of the time. It's not like movies and TV shows that you're literally engaging in the viewing of those together oftentimes, or you can find all these people talking about those things all at the same time. It's
right.
BookTube kind of serves as that in a lot of ways. Christy.
What you were saying, Ingrid, about you have to talk about it. I feel like that definitely, but in real life, whenever if someone who has not read the book or is not familiar with it, you want to be okay, I want to tell you about this thing, but before I tell you, I have to go through this whole thing, tell you how the setup and everything, and by the time you get to the actual thing, they're lost and lost interest or something.
Yeah.
But that's what having a good BookTube channel is good for.
I remember one time I've never gone to get my hair professionally cut. I either cut it myself or my mom cuts it. And I remember she was trimming it for me one day, and I was telling her about Way of Kings. And I'm like, okay, so this guy, he's a slave. And I'm going through the whole plot of Way of Kings just so I can tell her about how emotional the ending is. And I have no idea why I started talking to her about Way of Kings when I'm just sitting there. And so
it's funny that it's the longest book that gets over 1,000 pages.
Yes. She's like, that does sound really emotional. I'm like, yeah, it's so good. And I was almost crying telling her about it as she's trimming my hair. And I'm just why am I, my poor mom? She's probably her and her stories.
Yeah.
Anyway, Christy, I cut you off a little bit.
But I love that though. So I knew this was one of the questions in this tag. So I joked with Elle before. I'm the reason why I started my channel was so I could be on Worldhoppers. I'm joking, half joking. So I already reached one of my goals for starting my channel. But yeah, also my partner in real life, he hates it when I rant about books.
Oh, why? Your rants are so funny.
He doesn't like it when I get too negative. He'll definitely listen if I'm gushing about a book that I love and all the things that make me happy about it. But he doesn't like to listen to the rant. So I have my BookTube videos for my rants then.
I think your rants are hilarious. So I'm all for him. And it's funny because I feel like you're always a little bit like, okay, sorry, I won't turn this into a rant. I just want to say really quick. And then you rant.
And she proceeds to rant.
Yeah, you can't help it. That is funny though.
From me.
I mean, I feel like once again, my poor mom. So I went to help her because she had a dog. She has a dog. And when he was a little younger, he was very destructive around the house. And she's like, I don't know what to do because I have to go to work and I don't want to leave him in the crate and stuff. And I was like, I'll come over and I'll like hang out with him so he can be whatever. And so we were walking him when she got off work, and it was like over a mile. There's this one neighborhood that has a big circle. And I just am telling her for so long. I'm just ranting about like literally the whole mile circle. I was just ranting about something. Just like, this is why Booktube is helpful, because she doesn't know. I'm sure at some point she stopped listening. So that's what, Booktube is like, people want to hear it. Because then there's that feeling of like, finally, me too. I hated that thing. And that is a nice feeling. Or a dumb character that you're reading a book and a character makes a really stupid decision and it ruins the book. And you're like, why? And you just need somebody else. I do not like this next question because I just think it's really weird and it's very much like a work interview question. But if any of you have a fun answer, go for it. But what are some fun and unique things that you can bring to Booktube? I just feel like yourselves. I just think that's like the weirdest question.
It feels like that question that's like, what's your qualities? Like, what is your positive qualities?
Yeah. What could you bring personally qualified for this position?
Yes, that's what this feels like to me. So I kind of didn't want to bring it up, but I also think it's a funny question. So all of you, what do you bring to Booktube?
Me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, kind of.
Honestly, when I thought about this question, I was like, absolutely nothing. Nothing I do is like that groundbreaking or unique or something you've never seen before. I'm just like, I just want to make the same videos that everyone else does, but talking about the books that I
right?
I think I said that in my that in my actual like Booktube Newbie Tag that I filmed, like as my first video, and someone was like, no, you are the thing that's like unique. And I was like, okay. Okay. I appreciate it, but
well, Chris, in what you were saying about making videos about, so when I had my first channel, I used to like not make certain videos because I would feel like everyone was talking about that one thing, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to be just one more like person doing this, but I wanted to film the video. So this channel, I was like, no, I'm gonna film what I want to film. I don't care if anybody else, like if everybody else is doing it too. If I want to film it, I'll film it.
Yes,
because it's like,
I think so it's like the whole we all can't stand the not like other girls, not like other boys trope. And that's how we're like, I don't want to try to be like everybody else is subpar and I'm amazing and let me explain why you definitely want to watch my channel. Like I just feel like it's such a weird, it's like, no, I just want to be a part of the conversation. Everybody seems cool and nice and they have a shared interest and I want to talk to them about books. That's what I feel like is fun about Booktube in general. But yes, I'm glad that you all think that's a weird question too, because I think it's very odd. What are you most excited for with your new channel or your year-old channel in Sarah's case?
Being on Worldhoppers.
Yay, Worldhoppers.
That's funny.
Ingrid, do you want to start that?
I'll start this. I guess it's I kind of already answered this, but not really. For like the 8 months that I wasn't watching Booktube or filming any videos, like I missed it. I missed talking to people about books. It's like something that, like once I started doing the videos, it's something that I don't think I ever want to give up, if that makes sense. Like, so yeah, I missed it. I missed talking to people about books. I missed reading. So I think that's the most excited like thing that I am for this channel. It's just talking to people.
It sort of helps immortalize the experience of reading books as well. Not just like in a general sense, but specific books. I feel like I remember it better because I took the time to engage with other people, talk to my friends, make a whole video, recommend it later, they stay with me better than they would if I just read them and then moved on. So I think in a way that can be really helpful. Plus, when there's a sequel coming out and you're like, I don't really remember what happened. Sometimes you can just go to those conversations, those discussion videos, and revisit them. So that's always nice too. Sarah, what are you most excited for?
I'm excited to keep doing what I'm doing, I guess. Making videos that I find fun to make, and also doing like collaborative things like this has been really fun. So I want to keep doing those things.
Christy, the downside of going last is that sometimes everybody's already said the thing.
Okay. Another reason that I started my channel and what I'm like really excited to make videos about is, okay, so firstly, I have a really bad memory a lot of times. So after I finish reading a book, like especially if it's a series, if I'm gonna read the next book, like I have to reread the first book. Otherwise, I just don't remember anything. So, and then also sometimes when I'm reading a book, I have like really big reactions to things, but then I don't remember them like after. And I'm like, I want to make like spoilery filled reading vlogs where I have like those live reactions again, like you said, to like immortalize that experience. Because I just think it would be really fun later on to watch back and be like, oh yeah, like this is what happened.
I think too, one thing that I've really enjoyed, so I don't make a ton of vlogs because I think the longer I've been making videos, the more certain things I just don't always want to share. Like I have fun sharing with my dog and stuff like that. But there were a few older videos that my dad was in, or like Luna as the puppy or things like that, that I do like being able to go back and see those things where I wouldn't have had any reason to see them before. So it is kind of nice that it's not, those aren't even book related things. It's just kind of nice to take a snapshot of, I guess it sounds sort of selfish, but like your life at that time and just being able to, it's like it brings back memories in a lot of ways. So I do think that that's kind of another fun part about having a channel. These questions, the Booktube Newbie Tag, I mean, it does its job of like asking, but the next one, why do you love reading? Bring a really unique perspective to this question. Christy, why do you love reading?
Why does anyone love reading? Like, firstly, I pretty much mostly exclusively read fantasy because I just like to be transported into like a whole different world. And I feel like also I'm really it helps me like feel a lot of emotions when I read about like certain characters and events and stuff, because I feel like I don't feel like that many emotions in my real life. So it's like it's cathartic to like read a book and be so invested in it and like cry.
Not to kind of overuse this phrase, but it's like a safe space to experience emotions. Like you don't have to go to battle and you don't have to like do all these things, but you can feel all those emotions through the reader, the characters.
Yes, that's you're absolutely correct. That's exactly like what I meant to say.
You said it just fine. Sarah, why do you love reading?
I don't know. I feel like this is like such a silly question, but I mean, I've always loved fantasy just because it's like I don't have to read about any of like my problems like reflected back to me like in like a contemporary book. Like I don't ever have to like experience that in fantasy, or I mean, there might be some things that are like equivalent, but at least
they're not like paying your bills and yes.
Like having to go to my desk job. Like people in fantasy books aren't doing that. I mean, I guess the biggest thing I guess is just that it's fun. Like it's a fun thing to do. It's just like look at some words and imagine it in my head and just have a good time.
Yeah. Ingrid.
I agree. I mean, like But I like fantasy, but I also read like a lot of horror, right? When am I ever going to experience ghosts in my real life? Never. But I want to read about them, you know? It's just one of those things, like, it's just fun. Yeah, I guess I agree with what Sarah said. It's really fun, and it is sort of like escapism from like everyday life. And I guess that's why I also don't read a lot of contemporary, because like I just don't care. My life is the same thing, you know? So
And stories have always been, I think this is gonna sound really over the top, but it's always kind of been like an integral part of the human experience. You know, for
Yeah.
the longest time, things were told like art tells stories in so many different ways, whether it's movies, TV shows, literal actual paintings, or poetry. I mean, poetry is a form of, you know, reading as well. Music tells a story. I just feel like stories are a part of how we sort of experience the world and understand other people. And we can only live the life that we're living, but it's kind of a way to live a lot of other lives in a sense, or at least maybe understand other lives that you're not going to ever have that experience for. But yeah, I'm like, there's like not a new, fresh way to talk about why we love reading.
Yeah.
You know, all of your answers are lovely, but I just feel like that one's always tricky. What book or series got you into reading? Christy, I'll let you start this one.
Okay. It's actually okay. I don't want to get it from my shelf, but the book that got me back into reading, because like I went through the same phase that everyone else does with like you read a lot in like middle school and high school, but then you go to university and you just get so busy and you stop reading, and then you fall back in love with reading like years and years later. So the series that got me back into reading is actually a self-published steampunk fantasy that my friend just like randomly recommended to me, and I was like, okay, I'll start reading it. And then ever since I started reading this one, it's just been like downhill from there, or uphill, I guess. Anyway, so the series is called The Emperor's Edge by Lindsay Buroker, and it's just like a really fun kind of heisty steampunk fantasy with found family and like the best slow burn romance subplot that I have ever read. So yeah, I love that series a lot, and I'm like a huge advocate for it and want more people to read it.
Here, I'm sharing it on the screen so that people can see it.
Yeah, it's self-published, so you know the covers are kind of like, you know,
amazing.
Yes. It does feel very steampunky, like the cover itself. I like that.
Yeah, it looks fun though.
It is, and each book is only like 300 or something pages, and it goes by so quickly, and so many laugh out loud moments too.
That sounds fun. I remember, Sarah, you even had a thing once about on your Instagram stories, right, about slow burn romance.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the
So when I
best.
heard Christy talk about it, I was like, okay, I need to read that because I need more slow burn.
When
I remember
say
once.
Slow burn, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
When I say slow burn, it's like this series, like the first part of the series, like the main part, is I think like 8 books long, and yeah, it's slow burn.
That's what I'm talking about. I need slower than you think could be possible.
I remember doing a Worldhoppers video with some romance readers, and they were talking about things they hate in romance books, and they were talking about hating slow burn. I was like, slow burn's the best, and they're like, no. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's fun watching people fall in love gradually and not have this instant like, oh my gosh,
Insta love.
the stars and the sky collide the second I look at you, and now we're in love. I'm just like, no, I don't want that. But I think it depends on what you're looking for, because sometimes in your romance books, if you're looking for the steamy moments and it takes forever,
then you want it to hurry up.
Yeah, then I get it. It depends on what you're reading, but I like seeing like the relationships built throughout the story.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If you like seeing it, yeah. Like I like, there's a romance author, her name is Mariana Zapata, and all her books are very slow romance, and they're fun because you're seeing this relationship develop, But yeah,
Yeah,
if you're in it for the spice, it's not there. But
Yeah.
I heard her books, like the couple doesn't get together or like even kiss until like 97%.
yeah, I swear, no, it's true. I've read like I think 3 or 4 of her books, and yeah, every single book it's about the relationship and not really like, you know.
That's usually my favorite kind. But
That's
is that
pretty cool.
even really like romance? You know?
Well,
don't
it
know.
is because like I was looking this up, right? Because there's some romance that people call romance, and I'm like, this is not romance. So I guess the definition of romance is it has to have a happy ending. So if that's not the case, then it's not considered a
Tragedy.
romance. Yeah, it's a tragedy or whatever. Like I
Yeah,
think I've never read Colleen Hoover, but I've heard that's one of the criticisms is that her books aren't really romance because they don't end well.
That's
So I
such
don't
an
know.
interesting like argument to have. Like, no,
Right.
it's not. I remember somebody telling me in the in the comments of my Fourth Wing video that Fourth Wing isn't fantasy romance because there aren't that many sex scenes. And I'm like,
What?
all right. I mean,
I mean,
that's
how do you
you
argue
feel.
with that? You're like, okay.
Well, and they're like, it's not anything like Sarah J. Maas's Akatar series. And I'm like, pretty sure A Court of Thorns and Roses had less sex in it than Fourth Wing did. So if that's the standard, then Fourth Wing is more fantasy romance than at least the first book. Anyway, it's just whenever I see stuff like that, I'm like, whatever you want to say, however you want to categorize it. I don't have the energy to care that much. So
Right.
I just, all right. But I kind of get it at the same time because we're in this weird space now where fantasy romance sometimes gets mixed in with just fantasy. And then sometimes I feel like things that are more so fantasy are getting considered fantasy romance. And then it makes it hard for people to know what they're actually getting. And that can be frustrating. So I get that. But as far as like really caring about the classification of the subgenre for just the sake of whatever you consider it, I'm like, well, whatever you consider it, I guess is fine. Anyway, though, what book or series got you into reading, Sarah?
Well, so I was in like kind of the same boat as Christy. Like, of course, I read a ton when I was a kid and like middle school and stuff. And then after college, I was like, I don't know what to do with my life now that I don't have to be like studying all the time. So I was like, let me go to the library and see what they have. And like in the time that I was in college and like the end of high school, I was like, I feel like so many like classic YA fantasy books came out. So I felt like I had a lot to like catch up on. So the first one that I got really back into was Throne of Glass. So like that series, I just remember like staying up until like 4 a.m. reading those books. Like, oh my God, when is my hold going to come in at the library for the next one? And just like being obsessed and feeling like I'd never read a book like that before because I really hadn't. Because like when I was in high school, it like that those types of fantasy, YA fantasy weren't out yet. So I still have a lot of nostalgia for that series.
I actually still want to read that series. How does this work? Okay, right there. I still want to read it, actually.
It's pretty good.
I think it gets a lot of hate, but I think it's so popular. It's reached that point where I think kind of people sometimes can't resist thinking that it's probably garbage. When I get if it's not for you, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as some people treat it like it is. I don't actually think it's even bad. It's just like a lot of things, it just depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, and like expectations going in.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I think there's like a certain, of course, with anything hyped, it reaches a certain point where it's just impossible to meet the hype. And then it kind of becomes fun to make fun of it because a lot of really popular things go through that same up and down. And then there's the I feel like Throne of Glass is like Taylor Swift, where I feel like everybody for a while is like, oh, Taylor Swift. And then now everyone's going to her concerts. And I'm like, what? I feel like everybody's just decided that they're a Swiftie, I guess. And that's what I feel like with Throne of Glass and like Sarah J. Maas in general, is at some point people are like, no, I like this. And they just like
Can I make a sidebar about Taylor Swift? I think sidebar. I think the thing that I find like weird is that either people hate her or they love her. And I feel like the odd man out where I'm like, I'm just not sure where all the hype comes from. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think she's a bad singer. I don't think she's like the greatest. So I'm like, what happened here? You know, like either people are like, I hate Taylor Swift, or they like literally want to die for her. So I don't know. There's no like halfway, you know?
I feel pretty halfway.
I think people just get caught up in the hype.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we're all kind of collectively traumatized by 2020, and we're like, I want to live again. And so we're going to the movies and like doing Barbenheimer, and then we're going to these concerts. Yeah, so I think that's a part of it is just I saw that they made like a tiny little earthquake at one of the concerts.
Yes.
In Washington, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, sorry to
I know, sorry about this tangent. I just was confused.
No, you're fine because I kind of brought it up. But Ingrid, what book or series got you into reading or got you back into reading?
So it was definitely A Court of Thorns and Roses, but the funny part about that is that it was a makeup YouTuber that talked about the book. And this was like back, I think Court of Thorns and Roses was released in 2015. I think this was back in like 2016. And she's like talking about the book or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like something I would like. And so I picked it up and I read it and I like flew through it. And then I was like, I wonder if there's like people that review books on YouTube. And then I found Booktube. So it was like, I just have such a love for that series, and not because it's like the best thing on earth. Because I know objectively it's probably not, but I just love it, you know?
Nostalgia plays like such an important role.
Yeah.
And for all my like ragging on book talk, like I admit, like it is nice to see so many people falling in love with reading because of these kinds of books.
Yeah. I think a lot of there is something to books that are really accessible that I don't think you can really discount that quality, because if everything's really dense or if everything's really hard to get into, it's really hard to get into. It kind of makes reading even less accessible, not just because of that, but reading's already sometimes not that accessible for a lot of people. They don't have the time. They don't have the means. Maybe they don't live near a good library, or they don't have good internet access to do like the cool apps and stuff through the library. So I just feel like we want reading to be as accessible as possible. And if you find that series that you're like, oh my gosh, I got to go to Goodwill to see if anybody has brought in copies or something like that, like that's exciting. Or like, you know, Sarah, you were saying you were wondering like, when's my hold going to come in? And I just think that that's a good experience. Plus, I just really like that. I like the idea of reading becoming, sound like an old person, but like reading becoming cool. I think that's really fun. I think that's great. And it's only a good thing for everybody, because it's like reading's a great thing. I think most of us are pro reading, but also it's great for authors. It's great for, I mean, it's really cool that a lot of people have now been able to have careers as a result. Like you have self-pub authors that maybe would have never had attention, but because of the way that reading and talking about books has become such a big thing, now people have opportunities they wouldn't have had before, which I think is great.
It's also nice that now when I meet someone and they ask me like what I like to do and I say I like to read, their response isn't just, oh, I haven't finished a book since high school.
Yeah. Yes.
Like it's something to be proud of.
Or like, oh, so you're like really smart, and you're just like, I mean, I learned how to read in elementary school. I'm up with the ability, so I guess. Can you add? Because then I guess we're all smart. What questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? I feel like this is a weird question too. I don't like this question because it's so like, who do you idolize, and what would you ask the person that you stan?
I think this was like back when it was only like the three big booktubers, right? Like that's when this kind of was created. But like I feel like my favorite booktubers, a lot of them, like I'm in their Patreon, so like I could already ask them anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's that sense of community. It's just a lot easier to chat with people now, I think. Sarah. Do you have any questions for any booktubers, and what would they be?
Do you have any questions for Elle?
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, like, you're one of them, so I could just ask you.
We're the book twins. The amount of there's very few things that we don't feel the same on. Like, we love all the same stuff. Basically, it's pretty rare that we don't. So what would we even ask? Like, anyway,
I don't know. I don't know, because like, I guess like this question could be like, oh, questions you want to ask about like their favorite books or something, or it could be like, oh, like, how do you handle this thing in terms of content creation? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything, I guess.
Yeah. Ingrid, do you have anything?
Okay, I do have something. You know who like one of my really like favorite booktubers is Books and Lala. She's from Canada. I'm sure you guys know who she is. But she comes up with some crazy video ideas. And I'm always
she has
like,
great
dude,
video ideas.
Doesn't she? I'm like, dude, where'd you like how? Because I'm not that creative, you know? I just wonder it because like sometimes she'll talk about in her videos, like she has her videos like mapped out for like months. And I'm like, wow, that's like hashtag goals because I'm not like that. Like I literally plan things out the week I'm gonna film them. I'm like, yeah, I'll film that, you know.
Or
so
she's
I
filming,
wish
like,
I was a little bit
multiple
more
vlogs at the same time.
I know.
Like, how do you?
And then
keep
she'll
track
come
of
out
all that?
like months later, and she's like, "I've been doing this video for a year," and I'm like, "Wow, I'm not that creative." I guess I just would ask her like, "How do you do it?" You know.
I find for when I like to look ahead and plan and have like a rough idea. Like pretty much I have an idea of what I want to do from now until the end of the year with videos. But then I feel like I'm almost like a mood filmer, the same way people are a mood reader, where I'm like, I have this idea I want to do. And then sometimes I just decide I want to do that instead. But I don't think I've ever done something quite like what she does, where she has these ideas that take months and months and months. Or they're real, like she has some really fun, really specific things.
Yeah.
So we were talking about earlier, I just want to do the videos everybody else is doing. If you're doing those videos, you're just copying her, right? Like they're so specific.
I know they're
like,
so specific, yeah.
They're not like, you know, like, oh, my favorite books of all time. You can't be like, hey, how dare you copy that video? Like, because that's a thing everybody does. But she has such specific ones. You get what I'm saying. I don't need to keep going.
For sure.
But yeah, I do think that would be like, would the question essentially be, how do you come up with this? Or how do you plan so far?
Stay so organized. And she also talks about how she's like she's not a mood reader. And I'm such a mood reader that I cannot fathom like planning out what I'm going to read, you know? Because like, what if I don't want to read that?
Yeah.
So then the video just like is done. But
I have the really frustrating thing where I really love to organize and I really love to plan. And then I also want to just do whatever I want to do in that given moment. And it's like, these don't go together. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Christy, were you about to say something?
I forgot.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It wasn't that important. It was just like a random throwaway comment.
One of the other things, what challenges do you think starting a channel will be the hardest to overcome? What do you think? Christy, I'll let you kick this one off.
Okay. Well, firstly, like all the technical things, I'm so bad at it. My partner is a great help. Like he does all the research for me when it comes to like equipment. Like even, okay, for me, like I don't care that much about equipment, but then he's like, he's so into like technology and all that stuff. So he researches it all and he's like, okay, like, and then he already has some stuff too. So like the microphone that I'm using now, like he just gave it to me, and like the webcam, he gave it to me for like this video. So I guess I'm already on the way to overcoming that part. Another really specific thing though is like seeing myself on camera and just like coming to terms with how I look on camera because it's so different from what you see in the mirror. So then when I'm editing my videos, I'm like, oh, like this is what I look like, okay?
Yeah. And people, you know, I feel like it's gotten to a point where we talk about like self-love and stuff so often that it's almost like you're not allowed to express that sometimes you're just like, oh man. You're just like bummed, which isn't to say you should feel that way by any means, but there is like, because it's not normal to look at yourself that much. You know what I mean? Jessie, May, and I were having a conversation about, we touched on this in a video we did recently, and I was talking about how I like every now and then, because I film a lot of videos, that when I'm bulk editing, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I hate myself. Stop doing the like noise and don't say so much and why are you so parched, like what is going, because sometimes I have to like swallow in the middle of the video and I'm like, I don't understand, why can't I just talk like a normal person? But you just like, you start to notice little things, or sometimes I'll be like, I have one little hair just sticking right up this whole video. I'd like, you start to notice all these dumb things that likely no one else cares about or notices.
Exactly.
But yeah, you just kind of, and like, what is there to do but be like, well, I guess I'm going to post this on the internet. There's not really I don't know. I guess you just have to get over it.
It's not like someone's going to comment and be like, hey, Elle, you have this random hair sticking up on your head.
And if they did, I'd be like, oh, I know. You know, like, yeah, I know. But you're right. I don't think anybody's ever really pointed something out that specific. Every now and then I'll ask Sean, I'll be like, oh, do you notice whatever? And he's like, I literally don't even know what you're talking about.
Does Sean edit your videos?
No.
Oh, okay. No, because I thought, because you're like, oh, I usually ask him, so I wasn't sure if he was like,
oh no, if I usually, if it's anything, I'll show him a thumbnail and I'll be like, which version do you like more, this one or this one? He's like, they look the same. And I'm like, the background's a different color. What are you talking about?
Doesn't even notice.
Yeah,
I had to like refilm videos before because at editing I was like, I don't like the angle that I shot this at, or like I my microphone is like in the way. But then I'm just like, at that point I'm like, oh, whatever, who cares? No one cares.
Yeah. Do you feel that way too, Sarah?
Yeah. Sorry. So for me, when I started, I was really worried about editing because I was like, I have to like see myself and hear myself. And like that actually went super well the first time. I was like, oh, okay, this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it is because like I still have a chance to change things or edit things. So it's like, it's not like someone's going to see this raw footage of me being like trying to say the same word like 6 times. Yeah. So like I can present that better when I'm actually posting it. Whereas like something like this, I don't want to go back and rewatch it because I can't edit anything. So that was what I thought was going to be the hardest, and it ended up being fine. Yeah.
And like something that, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, with the technical stuff, like, I mean, I'm not doing this for like, it's not my job or anything. So I'm just very like, well, if the lighting sucks, it sucks. Like, if the audio sucks, it sucks. Like, people can still hear me and see me. So it's not a problem.
I was going to ask. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. I was going to say, it's like, if anyone ever sees my raw, unedited footage, I would just be mortified.
Same.
Yes. I think I used to film where every time I had pretty much a sentence, I would stop recording and then I would start the next sentence with a new recording. So it would be like 30 clips for one video. Oh, and now I try to do very much the opposite. Now I'm just like, just talk. Like, you don't need to be like, I'm going to talk and I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk and I'm going to stop, because it's, one, super annoying to edit, and two, it feels weird also because nobody talks like that. So I've tried to get past that. So that was something that's, I feel like I'm still having to try to deal with, is talking like how I normally, except for a little better. That's the goal. A little better than how I normally talk, like the best version. And I don't know if you've all ever done this, but sometimes when I go to bed, when we were talking about, you know, immortalizing books or them sticking with you, I will like talk through how I want to express what I feel about a book or how to describe a book.
I do that in the shower.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
my videos are very choppy right now because I'm always like stumbling over my words.
Mhm.
So
I don't think
it's
they're
like,
choppy.
oh, well, maybe that's just my editing skills. But Elle, I remember I just saw like a comment on one of your most recent videos where someone was like, Elle, I'm really impressed like that you pretty much like were able to film this really long video in one continuous shot. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, it's very impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm always like, I wonder if somebody's like, can you edit a little bit out, please? Because I remember a long time ago, somebody commented what is basically like the opposite of what I'm talking about, where they're just like, can you get through like 10 seconds without a cut? And that wasn't because I was stopping a lot. That was just like, I was just trying to keep things tight in the editing. Because I was like, at that time, I think videos in general, people didn't have the patience for videos to be too long, so I would try to trim out any fat, we'll say. But I think they misspelled something, so I was like, "Can you comment without misspelling?" And then they got angry, and then I was like, "It's jarring to watch when YouTubers edit too much." I think there's something to some people intentionally edit to be kind of like choppy because it hits certain beats, like it flows. Yeah. But I also think there are individuals who that's not the case, and they just maybe they stumbled a lot or weren't sure how to articulate themselves. I've also had instances where I misspoke, and I'm like, oh dang it, that was the complete opposite of what I meant to say, and I know that's confusing, so I have to try to cut it and find the next thing that would make sense. So I don't know if you've ever where you're like, how did I say that so incredibly incorrectly? I don't know if you've ever
that happens to me
that.
all the time. Or
I say the wrong word completely.
Another thing to overcome I've found is this is the most specific thing. So I'm curious if you've ever experienced this, where you say at the beginning of the video, like, I'm going to go through 8 books, and you say the number or something of that sort. And then you realize you forgot to mention one or something like that. And you're like, shoot, there's only 7. And then so you have to figure out like, but that was my intro. What do I do? So I try really hard to not do that now. I don't do like, we're going to go through 10 books or whatever the thing is. And it just happened the other day. The video's not gone up yet, but my September anticipated releases, one of the books got pushed back to October. But I say at the beginning, we have 5 books scheduled for the 26th or whatever. And I'm like, we don't though, dang it. Because now I can't just edit out that one book. I'll just have to insert like, this has been pushed back.
Just but then put like on the screen, just put the number. Like when you say 5, just click or 4. Like,
I know
that you misspoke. I do that all the time. I'm
gonna specifically comment on that video and be like, Elle is actually like this number of books,
ma'am.
I know. I'm just gonna I'll just put in like it's been pushed back to October 10th or whatever it is. But I'm just like, dang it. Who looks like oh no. That's kind of sad.
Well, that sucks.
Ingrid, did we get to what you thought would be difficult to overcome?
I think no, but I think for me it'll be like not looking at subscriber numbers, because as much as I like don't care, and we all know that Booktube is like not a place that you want to be for like, you know, huge YouTube or money, but like you also want to feel like you're putting all this work into something that's actually like people are watching, as opposed to like no one watching. But at the same time, like when I wasn't doing Booktube, like I told you guys, like I missed it. So it's like I'm doing it for me, not for anybody else. So I think that's one of the things. In terms of like the editing and stuff, it's like I do like editing. It's like one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. And I like watch. I kind of like feel really geeky about it because I like watching people talking about editing and like how they do different things and. Yeah, I just
how to improve.
I think that part's fun.
That is,
but
I think that is fun because it's a skill to build, like anything else.
But I do edit out a lot. Maybe like you guys are talking about it, in the people in the comments who are saying that, because I hate when I say and a lot. I'm like, and And I think it's just like one of those things, instead of saying I say and, so I edit out those ands because it's so annoying. I'm like, why don't you have a stronger vocabulary? Like, what is wrong with you, you know?
What else can you say other than and?
I say so. I say so
I do so
a lot. Where it's like,
I go like,
"Man,
so yeah."
That's one of the things. I almost said yeah in response, and then I thought that would sound like I was making fun of you, and I wasn't. But the amount of so's, and I'm like, I have to learn how to just start the next sentence without going, and then so, and I'm like, oh.
I watched this thing about like public speaking, and they say that you have to just try. No, you don't have to say anything, right? We say or and or whatever because you're trying to gather your thoughts, but it's something that you build up over time, and you gotta try to like relearn that behavior and just not say anything. You can take 2 seconds because it's not a long time, right? It's like a second where you're like and just not say anything, but it's hard.
Yeah,
because
I
like
say
we were talking
like
about,
a lot.
would you say like
what?
a lot?
I say like so much.
Mhm.
Me too.
That's
Everybody
a lot
does.
of people.
Yeah.
It's
But when I'm editing, I'm like, you sound like an idiot. Stop.
I think that's a big thing, except for Sarah. Sarah watched back was like, this, I'm pretty okay, actually. The rest of us are constantly upset of ourselves.
I had to edit out so much of that first video of me being like, and so, and like saying the same thing like 6 times, but
I could be wrong. I could probably be overgeneralizing here. I do think part of it is there's an expectation that a lot of us have, I guess you could say, internalized watching YouTube in general, that people expect things to be tight. They expect the editing to, because some people have actual professional editors, and then we think we need to do that, when part of what makes Booktube, I think, kind of special is that it is just a person gushing about books or ranting about books or giving book recommendations. So it is more conversational, and it's less like, hello everybody, where like people are spinning around and, you know, like being really over the top. That's not really I mean, it is for some people, but it's not for most of Booktube. And I like that. I like that it feels as though I could sit down and actually be talking to that person. I know a lot of people know probably who Jade is because she's been on Worldhoppers many a time. But Jade, I always thought she seemed like the most genuine person when talking about books. Like there was no difference between how she's talking on camera versus how she is in real life. And Joshana's the same way. And I was always drawn to people who it didn't feel, and I want to be clear, there's something to when you're nervous, you might talk different or you're uncomfortable with the camera, or we all have those days where something bad happened, but you sit to film and so it feels like it's not organic. That's different than putting on an act and a performance. So just being clear that those aren't the same. But I've always just been really drawn to people who it feels like almost full circle. We talked about at the beginning of just like, oh, I feel like I could be friends with this person. So that's something I've always really liked.
You know, like something you just said made me think of a video I was editing like recently. I did like my entire physical TBR, and I filmed like an intro at the end of the video for the thing. And literally my face, I was like, who died? Like you're talking. It was like so devastated. I'm like, so I'm gonna and I had to like refilm the whole thing because but it was because I was so like overwhelmed by the amount of books unread.
I have found that taking thumbnails is the most narcissistic thing ever. And when you're not sure which thumbnail image is going to be the best one, so you have several, and you're just like, I have so many photos of myself. It's like so uncomfortable. Like what you were saying earlier, Christy, if anybody found your unedited footage, it's kind of like if anybody found my filming phone, I'd be like, I don't love myself that much. I promise. You know who I love? I love my dog Luna Bear. That's who I love, not myself. I swear. And then the other thing is for making thumbnails for Worldhoppers or for live shows for, you know, like the Storm My Archive read along or something, I'll save people's photos for the thumbnail. And I'm like, this makes me seem odd. Like I have them in my favorites because like frequently their profile picture that I'm going to put in the thumbnail. I'm just like, oh, that's so weird. I wonder if they'd be like, what the heck? Why is a photo of me like one of your favorites? So that scares me. Getting back to there's a few more questions to the actual tag. We already talked about what books that we like to read. Do you want to add anything, or do you feel like we've kind of covered that? Kind of covered.
I think we covered it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We made fun of this question, but where do you read? I think we made fun of this right before we started filming.
Yep.
I think not when we started, but on the couch, primarily in bed. If it's an audiobook while I'm on the treadmill or when I'm like doing laundry or something.
Pretty much. Like, where else would you read? I don't know.
I used to read as I was walking home from work. Like, I would walk on the sidewalk and I had like my book like this.
That's not safe.
Audiobook. That's really
But it was like a one continuous street, and like there were like not that much traffic on it, so it was okay.
I like that. I have seen sometimes when we go to the gym, if Sean and I are both on the bike machines or something, he'll just bring a book and be reading on the bike machine. I'm like, I can't do that because even that motion is too much motion to try to read a physical book. So I admire you for that. Then the last question, when did you start reading? Sorry, I read by a fireplace wrapped in a blanket. A hot drink while it's raining outside. Yeah, isn't that the dream? Exactly that. The most like, I love books place to read. But when did you start reading? I think we touched on this. A lot of us were saying we started when we were young, and then we had our, life got really busy, and then we started reading again, sort of situation. But is that true for all of us? I think, Ingrid, you're the only one that maybe didn't mention that, but is that the case for you as well?
No, actually, I didn't read when I was younger. I started reading when I was in high school, and I stopped, and then I picked it up again. So yeah, I guess it is a little bit different because when I was little, I wasn't an avid reader.
That is different from a lot of people. And I actually always find that to be really fun because I think there is this weird, it almost becomes a part of your identity when you're really little that you're a reader. So I always think it's cool when people come to reading a little bit later. Not that it's not cool to read when you're a kid too. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, it was, I had my volleyball coach used to be an English teacher, and he would let us go in his classroom and just pick out any books. So that was nice. Fun. I mean, like, things that, teachers like, oh, nobody appreciates me, but here we are.
Yeah, because of that teacher and their kind act. That's it, though, for the Booktube Newbie Tag, plus some other things like book talk and how has Booktube changed and
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Are there any other final thoughts from Ingrid, Christy, or Sarah before we end the video?
I have one more thing, and I hope this doesn't derail or make this go on any longer. But one of the challenges that I remembered is negative content is so popular, and the one really ranty video that I did got so many more views than the other ones. So it's once you get a taste of that, it's if you gotta resist trying to make everything negative to
Yeah, I think that's true. And I actually have a video that I've messaged Leanna about that I think will be really fun, talking about rant reviews versus gush reviews. Because the perception, I think, is that a lot of negative reviews, there is this idea almost what you're talking about, where at some point people recognize it's popular. And so they only do those things because it's popular and because they want views. And then it results in them finding things wrong with books. It doesn't feel like they're actually being genuine about their rage. And then you can kind of say the same about gushing, where it's you just love all the popular stuff because you're trying to appeal to these fandoms. And there's some truth to both of those scenarios, but that's not true of everyone, and there's nuance. So I am excited to eventually, that won't probably go up for a long time, but that is going to be I think a fun discussion because when you get when you're oh, people like the salts.
Mhm.
Exactly.
It's kind
I
of
just-
sad though. 'Cause
As long
sometimes
as
I'm like,
it's genuine, it's fine. I just feel like
Yeah.
there are certain creators that all they do is talk negatively. And it's like, why'd you even read if you hate everything that you read? I would be miserable, right? Like if everything you read, you're like, this is trash. So it's like, it's obvious that it's not true, you know?
it becomes
feel
their
like-
brand.
Yeah. But then I don't know. I guess it just
Well, and
wouldn't
some
be fun.
people's patrons vote for books for them to read, and they'll
Right.
start to vote for books they think they're going to hate because they think
Right.
it's so funny to watch them. And some
Right.
people are like, I guess I'll read this. You all really want me to read this.
Mhm.
And I think that's still coming from a genuine place because you didn't really want to read it, but your patrons wanted you to, or
True.
subscribers or whoever. But there are some instances where I think it can actually come from a false place where you just want to appeal,
Mhm.
whether it's the popular opinion or the unpopular opinion. I say air quotes because usually the unpopular opinion is not that unpopular.
I know.
Usually it's, or maybe it is mainstream wise, but to your audience, it's not. Like, everybody's going to agree with you for the most part in the people that watch your videos or something. But no, Christy, I think that is an interesting thing to bring up. Are you gonna become a sellout? You're just making videos for the views and the money.
I mean, it's hard sometimes because I'm like, a lot of books, I'm like, ooh, I know I'm gonna hate this, but wouldn't it be fun to like rant them? Like, okay, no, like enjoy reading, you know?
I guess, yeah, I'm just like, I don't think I would like to read if everything I read was like,
Yeah.
but I get what you're saying, because like some things are so bad that you like hate read them, right? You're like, I hate this, but I have to finish it.
Yeah, I remember, since I brought up Leanna, I know we've talked about before that sometimes a book you hate is more fun to read than a mediocre
Oh, for sure.
middle of the road, because you just feel nothing when it's the middle of the, you get down and you're like, I read that, I guess. But then when you hate it, you're like, what? Okay, hold on. And it becomes fun. Like, I feel bad because I never
true.
like, being like, I'm going to shout out this thing I didn't like. But like, A Game of Fate was so fun. Like, he dumped her out of her pants. Like, what? That's still the funniest thing to me. And I was telling my friends about it the other day, and I started almost crying laughing, and I'm like, it's not that funny. I just had forgotten until I brought it up again. That he's like Hades, and he has the nightclub, and he gets her to answer questions about like they're playing a game of poker or whatever. And then eventually he lets her pick, and she picks rock, paper, scissors. And it's still funny to me because I'm like, rock, paper, scissors? I don't understand why that was. Anyway, I guess. And then it's funny because commenters were like, well, it's a game of chance. Like, her chances are pretty good of winning. And I'm like, that's a good point, I guess. But yeah,
I feel
that
like
was
that he dumped
entertaining.
her out of her pants line is like so iconic for your channel now that if you ever came out with merch for your channel, you have to have a shirt that says he dumped her out.
I would have to put it in very small print though, so that people could actually wear it. Because like, I feel like walking around with a shirt that said he dumped her out of her pants is like very, But yeah, just like, because I remember it. I don't know about other people, but it sounds like he like turned her upside down and shook the pants out. So yeah, like loose change. You're trying to get the change out of your clothes before you wash them. Anyway, so that book was funny. I was reading it and I'm like, it was very entertaining. So I almost feel like I can't say I hated it because it was so funny. So, but at the same time, I'm like, I mean, I don't like it. I almost thought about reading the sequel just because it was so funny to me. But that's an experience of like, I would not want to replicate that over and over and over again. But every now and then it's pretty funny.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah. But Christy,
I would vote for you to read that sequel.
She wants all the salty videos.
You know what would be fun would be to read Neon Gods and every other Hades Persephone, and then somebody's probably done that. They've done a side-by-side of all of them. Which one?
You probably wouldn't like that either, I don't think.
I don't think so. From what I've heard, I don't know if that. Oh yeah?
I read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're book twins, so maybe I would like it.
Yeah.
Don't rely on that too much.
Okay. So I mean, there's a few things here and there that we don't both love. So,
but like for what it was fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun then if I do pick it up, and then I can thank you for it. Christy, that was a really fun last thing to bring up. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention? Any like elaboration on that?
No, I'm good now.
No, you're good. Okay. Any other final thoughts from Ingrid or Sarah? No. This was super fun. I was actually so excited for this video before we started because Sean got home right before, and I'm like, I'm really excited for this video. So this was tons of fun. For anybody that ends up watching this, please check out all of their channels and just every now and then look up Booktube Newbie Tag or just maybe find some smaller booktubers here and there because it's a lot of fun. There was another individual who was supposed to join us, but they were sick, so they could not. But in general, just, look up newer booktubers. And, the one question about like, what makes you special? It really is fun to find new booktubers, if only because it's just like having a sibling where you're like, just being around them all the time. At some point you're irritated by them. And I feel like that about, YouTube. At some point you're like, I like this creator, but it's nice to have a new perspective.
I gotta branch out.
Yeah. So watch their videos. They're all lovely, wonderful people with fun channels. But thanks for joining, and definitely check out Worldhoppers merch. All AdSense goes to charity as well as profit from merch sales. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all later. Bye.